Hi, today in art, we're going to start a piece of North Carolina art. It's going to focus on one of the many North Carolina lighthouses. This particular lighthouse is the lighthouse at Cape Hatteras, but I will share other lighthouse designs with you and you may choose another one. We're going to use the tools of a pencil, a ruler, and then when it's time to color, we're going to use colored pencils and we're going to work on value scales. Value is the lightness or darkness of a color. We're going to start with our ruler creating the shape of the lighthouse. The lighthouse is wider at the bottom than it is at the top. So I have my ruler placed at a slight angle, and I'm not going to start at the top of my paper, and I'm not going to go to the bottom. But my lighthouse is going to be very tall, like the one on the left-hand side of the page. I also expect you to draw very light until you get it right. I'm drawing a little bit darker on my paper so that you can see my lines better, but I expect you to draw a little bit lighter until you get it just right, and then you can go back over it and align your ruler again and darken it. There are curves at the top and the bottom. This is like a cone, but we don't see the point of the cone. So we need a slight curve, and I'm drawing very light and then going back over it again and darkening. And later on when we get colored pencils, you'll go even darker. And at the bottom, it also needs a slight curve. Remember, this is a cone, and the base of a cone is a circle. Our shading is also going to help us make it look 3D. At the top of the lighthouse, there is a small cone, and that allows the light to be covered in bad weather. So there's going to be another small cone at the top. And I'll just go back over it until I get it dark like I want it. Later on, I'm going to color it black, and it's going to come to a point like a cone. If you want your ruler to help you make that line, you can. And then, of course, I want to add in the parts that support the cone at the top. I'm going to give it 3 lines to show that there is more than one piece of metal holding up the part that houses the light. Again, you can use your ruler to help you with that if you like. Next, I'm going to create a small piece of ground. This is not where this lighthouse actually sits, but a lot of lighthouses in our state and around the United States sit on a small peninsula that extends out into the water. That way, when ships are driving through the ocean, they will know to avoid the land, all of those peninsulas that stick out in the water. The next thing we're going to do with our ruler is we're going to place it horizontal. So I look at the top of my paper and the bottom of my paper, and I try to make my horizontal line parallel to the top and the bottom of the paper. This line is called the horizon line. The word horizon is where we get the term horizontal. Notice I have my fingers spread out on my ruler so it does not move. So that is my basic setup for this piece of art. The only other thing I'm going to use my ruler for today is I'm going to put 2 beams of light. One beam of light coming from one side and one coming out the other side, and both of these would be cone shapes of light. Just like if you were shining a flashlight, it would be a cone that's small, close to the bulb of the flashlight, and gets larger out in the distance. When I use my ruler, I'm always pushing my paper against the metal side, and today I'm not using my ruler to measure, I'm using my ruler as a straight edge. A straight edge is when an artist uses any object to help him or her create a straight line. So that's my cone of light to the left. Now I'm going to build my cone of light to the right. I always spread my fingers out like I'm playing a piano to help keep my ruler from moving. When I place it up here, same thing. I spread my fingers out and push down hard to keep it from moving. Inside of the lighthouse, there is a spinning mechanism that allows this beam of light to turn around and around, so ships approaching from any direction could see that light from far away and avoid the land. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my stripes that go down and around the cone, like at the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. I can also see that I need to add in the small ledge at the top right there, so I could come back, add in a second curve right here, and then bring that out some. All right, so now I'm going to show gradual curves. I want you to think about a candy cane and how the stripes go around a candy cane. They stay pretty consistent in width. And as they go down the candy cane, you can predict where they will come around on the other side. And then at the bottom, we just have a large area. I don't need to add another stripe right here. And then think about consistently going black and white if you copy this design right here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use colored pencils to add in a value scale. But first, I want to break up the ocean, and I want to break up my light. So I'm going to use a series of diagonal lines. Your lines may not be just like mine, but I'm just going to break it up. This is very abstract, the way I'm doing this art. Because when we see a ray of light, oftentimes we don't see one solid color. As it hits your eyes, as you move, you see different warm colors, and that's how we are going to shade that. We're going to shade it with different warm colors. We're also going to work with value. We're going to try to make some of our colors lighter and some of our colors darker. So I just continue to do diagonal lines. Yours may not look just like mine. That's okay. Like I said, every time this light would turn, or you would turn your head, you might see the light being broken up by various objects. So that's why we are adding some lines in there. These lines should be fairly straight, diagonal lines. The next lines are going to be very curved lines that break up the water. You can think of these as waves, and a lot of times the water's coming in and it's hitting land, and that's causing it to break up. So these are going to be curvy, wavy lines, and again, I'm thinking about the movement of the water. Again, yours may not look just like mine, and that is fine. Everybody's art is going to look different, and it might have your own ideas of what waves and what the ocean looks like. So these are broken wavy lines. And I'm drawing these very lightly. I want you to draw them even lighter than I'm drawing. I'm drawing them dark enough so that people can see them on the board. Each section that we're drawing is going to have, for the water, we're going to use the cool colors, blue, green, and purple. And for the light, we're going to use the warm colors, red, yellow, and orange. We're also going to try to show the sun in the background. I can't wait to see how yours turns out. Hi, today in art, we're going to start coloring our lighthouse picture. We're going to use a value scale, so we're going to go from light to dark with a lot of our colors. The thing I'm going to start with today is I'm going to start with the sky. I want to go from light yellow at the bottom, then to orange, then to red, and then to purple at the top. And I want to take it from light to dark and blend the yellow into the orange, blend the orange into the red, blend the red into the purple as I go. So I think about the sun going down and being a really, really super bright color right at the horizon. We learned last time that the horizon is this line that marks where it appears that the sky and the water meet. That's the horizon. And that's where we get the term horizontal. So I start with super dark yellow. With colored pencils, I get a value scale by pressing really hard or by pressing softer like I'm doing right now. And as I already said, that part's going to blend into the orange. So all the way across, I go very consistently pressing down very, very hard because that's where my sun has just gone down. And I also think about the fact the sun usually is kind of circular. So that dark yellow, it could be a little bit taller here in the middle. If I want to think about the sun going down right behind the lighthouse. And from there, I want to blend in my orange. You'll also notice I'm coloring parallel to the horizon, and as we blend this, it's going to get more pale going up and always stay parallel to the horizon. So I'm going to start with my orange now. Now, since the orange is so much darker than the yellow, I need to press really lightly, very, very lightly, and take long, careful strokes. So when I go back down, I'm going to try to blend this into the yellow gradually. And part of the way I do that is pressing super light right now, very, very light. It's a little bit tricky at the edge of the paper because the length of my stroke changes, and it's a little bit trickier close to the lighthouse. Again, the length of my stroke is changing. So as I start on the other side, same thing. I start by pressing very, very lightly, taking long strokes, and then I have to be very careful about how I try to blend it into the yellow, pressing super softly, very, very lightly. I'm going to try to keep this being pretty parallel to the horizon. Again, pressing very, very lightly when I start to touch the yellow and blend it. I can always add more. It's tough to take it away. In fact, we might have to come back with an eraser to erase some of it and try blending again. So if you get it too dark, if you press too hard, that eraser might help us later on. But I'm pressing so softly right now, I'm hardly touching the paper as I blend into the orange. You can see I've turned my paper sideways, or I'm standing sideways in orientation to my paper, so I can go back and forth carefully holding my pencil on its side. Next I'm going to go to red, and with my red I'm going to try to blend with my orange, pressing pretty softly, and then I'm going to blend into the purple as I go up. So with colored pencils, it helps not to have a super sharp point. When you have a more dull tip, it's easier to blend. That's why a lot of times when you see the pencils, I don't ever put sharp points on those pencils. I'm trying to keep my strokes pretty straight, very parallel. Parallel is when lines go side by side and they don't ever touch. If I get into my light a little bit, it's okay because I'm going to use those warm colors later with my light. I'm going to take this red and I'm going to bring it down into the orange just a little bit, going light, very lightly. Same thing over here, very, very lightly. Now, my picture is going to be a little bit different than the example that is on the left-hand side of the screen. I'm not going to blend my red into my purple until I get above the rays of light for the lighthouse. So here's where I'm going to do a little bit more red, and then at the top I'm going to fade that into purple. See, as my pencil gets more dull, it becomes easier to make these long colored areas without actually being able to see the strokes of my pencil, each mark that the pencil makes. I'm going to put the word value out of the way so I don't move that as I color. I'm pressing super soft right now. This is one of the advantages of colored pencils over a medium like crayon or markers, because those you only get one shade out of, or it's really tough to get lighter shades out of. But when we're doing value blending, we've got to get those various shades. I'm going to bring this up higher so it's more fun blending it with the purple. I'm kind of going back over it, trying to even it out. All right, next I'm going to come back with violet or purple. I'm going to try to find one with a pretty dull tip on it. And then I'm going to start making my soft strokes and then bring that down and blend it into the red. I want my purple at the very top of my paper to be pretty dark. Think about that as the night sky. The sun has already set and it has gone down. So this part at the very top of our paper is very streaks of red showing through. That means I need to touch softer and softer with my colored pencil. I want to be pretty consistent and even with it. And go back over this, blend some more. And again, at the top of my paper, I want it to be a pretty dark value of violet. So I'm just going back over it again and pressing harder and getting that value fairly dark. Now, one thing I'm not doing in this sunset is I'm not adding in clouds. Since we're learning about value now, clouds would make that even more challenging, and how light plays off of the clouds at the sunset. I'm going to do just a little tiny bit of purple right here to show that I brought that purple all the way down. And a lot of times at the sunset, you'll see the streaks of purple might be streaked in with the red. So pressing very, very light and just bringing that down into the red just a little bit. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with my orange, and I'm going to add in a little bit more orange here and blend down into the yellow a little more carefully. I'm going to pull that down into the yellow. And then just do some small areas and just work on my blending. Again, I might have some streaks, and that's okay. The streaks are kind of representative of clouds. I'm just going to take that orange back up into the red. All right, so our sky is done. The next thing I'm going to work on is I'm going to do warm colors for the lights. So the warm colors of the lights are going to be yellow and orange, but I'm going to start by taking a red and go over my pencil lines with red, like the example on the left-hand side of the screen. I might use my ruler again, or I might do this freehand to go back over those lines to show the rays of light. Again, when I'm using a ruler as a straight edge, I'm not measuring, I'm just getting a straight line with it, and I have to spread my fingers out on it like I'm showing you to keep it from moving. Now, all the shorter lines I'm going to do freehand because that's the way that we drew them to start with. Although they're relatively straight diagonals, they might have some twists and turns to them. I'm just going to go over those lines with red with a medium pressure. I'm not pressing as hard as I can. But then you can see from the example on the left-hand side of the screen, then I'm going to use yellow to start with, and I'm going to come back and add some orange to show the light. Again, with this part, we're using the warm colors for light. Warm colors are red, yellow, and orange, the colors of fire. This is an abstract representation of a real lighthouse. Part of the reason I say it's abstract is because we're using our imagination to show what the light would look like and the ground would look like. And as I explained early on in the sketch, although this lighthouse design is based on a real North Carolina lighthouse, that particular lighthouse does not sit out on a peninsula like this one is in the picture. A peninsula is a point of land that this one is sitting on. So all these intersecting lines create some nice angles. Now, like you can see on the image on the left-hand side, closer to the lighthouse, I'm going to color a fairly dark yellow. And then my challenge is to get lighter and lighter as I get further away from the lighthouse, just in that shape. So every time I start with a dark yellow, and then I get lighter. I'm trying not to move my hand position from where I start. So I just start by pressing down pretty hard and then getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until on the screen it looks almost white. But in real life I can see that it's still pretty yellow. So I'm pressing hard, then medium, and then soft. Hard, then medium, and then soft. But it's a very gradual change in pressure. It's not like I'm pressing hard and then I stop pressing hard and start pressing medium. I get softer and softer with how hard I'm pressing down on my pencil. That's how I create value with colored pencils. Changes in pressure. When I'm using paint, I can change value by adding a darker color. I can change value and make my color darker by adding black paint. Or if, for instance, I've been painting a light blue, I can add more dark blue to it instead of black to shift from a light blue to a dark blue. But we're not using paint for this project. We're using colored pencils, and we're practicing this with pencil. So like the word value that I had up here, you can even try value shading with just a regular pencil anytime you're working. You can also do this with crayons and just change your pressure. You might try it with letters like this so that you start light or start dark on one side of the letter, and then I find it's easier to get lighter and lighter than it is to start light and go darker and darker. I don't want to leave any white spaces in my sections of light. You may be going much slower and taking your time. All I ask is that you do your personal best and respect the work of others and allow them to do their best work. And then on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press hard closer to the lighthouse. And as I get further away from the lighthouse, I press softer and softer and softer and softer so that my value can change. Okay, I do want to represent all of the warm colors in this. So since I've already used red for the outlines and yellow for the beams of light, I am going to come back and add just a little bit of orange into the side of each section of light that is closer to the actual lighthouse. I'm going to find an orange pencil that's kind of dull, and I'm going to press very, very, very softly to add in just a little bit of that orange to help show that the value is darker close to the lighthouse. I'm pressing super soft. In fact, it just looks like I'm making the yellow darker. And that's okay. I don't want very much orange at all. Just a hint. And I'm just gradually blending that into the yellow. On a bigger piece like that, I can press a little bit harder with the orange. But I don't want too much orange to show up. Same thing on the other side. Close to the lighthouse, press softly with the orange. As I get the tip more and more dull, it gets easier to make this blend. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the waves. The waves show cool colors, blue, green, and purple. So I am going to, in each section, and we're not doing blue, green, and purple in each section of the water. I'm going to do some of them purple, and as I fade out the purple, I'll come back with blue. So I might start this one with purple and then fade out and then come back with blue. I'm going to skip around some because I want to have some green spaces in between my purple-blue spaces. So I'll be skipping around. I might come down here and do this one next and fade it to blue. Again, this is really abstract. The water doesn't look like this. However, you do see the cool colors in water. And of course, at a rocky section of land where a lighthouse would be, the water's going in lots of different directions. There is there's land, there's rocks, there might even be parts of piers or parts of old ships or fishing equipment at the shore that we can't even see that's underwater that's changing the direction that the water is moving as it comes in. So I'm going to start now by skipping around and fading out some purple spots, and then later on I'll come back and add the blue when I'm working with the blues and the greens. So my other sections are going to have green in them and fade to blue. So I'm going to start pretty dark with the green and then fade over as I go. Now with these, I would say it's okay to have some white streaks because that's something that's very characteristic of ocean waters, ocean waves. They're going to have some white streaks of foam. And I think I'm going to blend light blue with my green and dark blue with my purple. Since all of our colored pencils boxes here in the art room have light blue colors in them and dark blue colors in them, that will allow us to have more values of blue in our overall piece of work. Again, you'll find this easier to do if your colored pencil is more dull. Once my point starts to get flattened and dull, it's a lot easier to blend like this and to change my value. So I did say that with my purple part, I'm going to blend that with dark blue. And then with my green pieces, I'm going to blend that with light blue. You have to be very careful when you're looking at the pencils because in a lot of cases, the violet and the blue pencils look a lot alike, but there should be a word on the side. If you're not sure, test it on the side of the box. Especially when I cross over into the purple, I go very, very lightly. Your strokes might be more curved on the water also. Because up here we were using straight lines. Down here we're using lots of curved lines. So if your strokes curve or you change directions on your stroke, that's a little bit more appropriate for the water than it was for the light. For an activity like this, it's extremely important that you watch your hand and you focus on what it is you're doing and what each part should look like. I also suggest that you do what I'm doing, which is to go ahead and do all of your purple at one time. Do all of your green at one time. Do all of your blue at one time. First of all, you can work faster when you work this way. But secondly, it means you are always using the same color. So I've repeated the same color throughout my work of art. And then I did state that I would be using a light blue to blend in my green section. So I had more colors of blue in my water. And again, I'm getting very soft when I start to blend the blue into the green. When I start, I'm pressing medium hard. And as I move over into the green, I press softer and softer so that in that section I can see some blue and some green. Getting softer and softer as I get back closer to the green. And then I have to work very carefully so I don't get into the sky. Awesome. Now the easy parts are left. Shading the lighthouse. And I want to make sure with my lighthouse, I also show value scales by blending around the side to make it look like a cone. And then on the ground, I'm also going to do some different values in the grass. So on our lighthouse drawing, we've done warm colors to show the light of the lighthouse, and we've used cool colors to show the water. And we've tried to show different values, the lightness or darkness of a color. Now we're going to do our grass. We're going to add a shadow for the lighthouse on the grass, and we're also going to do our design that makes it the unique lighthouse that it is. So on the grass, I'm going to use a couple of different shades of green, and I'm using small loopy lines because the grass that is at the beach is very tough and short. And I also want to show value. I want to show the lightness or darkness of a color. So as I continue to just add in the grass and fill in those areas, then I'll come back with a darker green and add some more, and I'll use a lighter green. But basically I'm just moving my pencil in loopy lines as I add in these layers. Also, for the grass at the beach, the sand is always sort of showing through. Erosion's very challenging along the shores of the North Carolina coast. You not only have the wind, but you also have the water to deal with all the time. And when strong storms come through, like hurricanes, they shift around so much sand, it's really hard to have a natural looking lawn like we do here in High Point. So I'm using sort of a medium green right now. Most of the boxes in our classroom have a light green in them, a dark green, and some have a medium green to them. And I want to use all of those. And if you wanted to, you could also add in some brown to be like sand. But I think loopy lines are the best to show the texture of that tough grass and those tough plants that are able to survive in the sandy, salty soil along the North Carolina coastline. And some people have asked me if here at the edge they could add some more brown to show the sand. And again, you may want to mix some brown in, just like everybody's lawn is going to look different at the beach. Everybody in our class is going to have a different looking piece of land that their lighthouse is sitting on. The main thing right now is I don't want you to just color back and forth like we did on these other places, that you're trying loopy lines and that you're showing the earth and you're showing the grass and you're showing those twisted tough plants that live in such a harsh environment out there on the coast on the Outer Banks. So once I get done with this medium green, I'm going to come back with a light green, and last I'm going to do the darker green on top. I think that one is going to show the best. And I might add in a little brown too, since I've been asked about that. Now the design on the lighthouse that I'm going to do is going to be the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. It's got a black and white spiral pattern like a candy cane. However, in class we've looked at the Body Island Lighthouse, we've looked at the Currituck Lighthouse, we've looked at the Bald Head Island Lighthouse, affectionately called Old Baldy. So if you chose to do one of the others, you're welcome to do that. So as I said, after I did the medium green, I'm going to come back with the lightest green and try to fill in a lot of this white space. I'm still doing loopy lines, but I'm moving a little bit larger as I move around and do the loopy lines. You'll see that it's harder to see my strokes, my loops, with the lighter pencil. But again, I'm not coloring in straight lines. This shows that the ground is rough. So that's why we're coloring using loopy lines, going all the way to the edge of the paper. If you get some on the table, that is okay. And I was talking about the design of the lighthouse. So you don't have to copy the design of the lighthouse I'm showing on the board, but I really encourage you to copy the design of one of the North Carolina lighthouses. And some people have asked me if they could create their own lighthouse design. Well, since we're doing a piece of art that is based on nonfiction, I would prefer that you do one of the designs of one of the North Carolina lighthouses. But if you feel strongly about just showing your own artistic ideas and making up your own design for the lighthouse, you may do that. But I strongly encourage you to show people that you've learned about North Carolina lighthouses and to do one of the designs that we have. So one thing that we've learned about the lighthouses is that the designs on them let people in boats out in the water know where they are during the day. They can see the design on the lighthouse, whether it's a diamond pattern or a stripe pattern or a solid color, and they know what part of North Carolina they're off the coast of. They know whether they're close to Wilmington, or they know if they're close to Southport, or they know if they're close to Kitty Hawk, if they see the Body Island Lighthouse. They know if they're sailing north and they're about to pass into Virginia, they should be seeing the Currituck Lighthouse, which is reddish off the shore. So, the coloring of them is important. They serve as landmarks. Kind of like road signs help people who are driving cars know where they are. The lighthouse lets people who are driving ships know where they are as they pass our state, going up or down the east coast of the United States. So, at night, each lighthouse also has a pattern of light that it shows off. Might flash for 2 times, 2 bright flashes of light, and then go dark for 17 seconds. And then have 2 more bright flashes of light and go dark for 17 seconds. So at night, ship's captains can know which lighthouse they're passing from the light, and during the day, they can see the colors and the pattern on the side of it and know which pattern it's showing, which lighthouse it is. So I'm pretty pleased with the earth that I've done there. Now I'm going to work on the coloring of my lighthouse, and so I really just need a black colored pencil. If you're doing Currituck, you need red. So with the black, we can press very hard to get a very dark black like I am right now. I want a very even coloring for the cone on the roof of my lighthouse. And then as I go down the side, I can also show value, the lightness or darkness of color, as I go down the side of the lighthouse. I also want to color in these supporting beams that hold the roof up. I am going to come back and do warm colors inside of this area at the top. I had some erasing here earlier where I modified this top and turned it into a small ledge. Okay, so as I start my stripe, I'm going to start with the black at the very top. And then I'm going to skip a spot. That's going to be white. I generally try to color in the direction of the stripes. So notice I'm coloring following that descending curve. Another thing I think about when I'm using colored pencils is for most of the coloring, I don't want a very sharp point on my colored pencil. I want it to be kind of flat on the tip. And that helps with my coloring to be even and smooth. No white spaces at all. And you can always go back over what we're doing right now and go back and press even harder and make it darker and darker and darker. So in our coloring, we also want to show that the shape of this lighthouse is a tapered cylinder. And so we're going to add some shading on the sides of it so that people see that it's a 3-dimensional form. All right, so what I want to add now is if you'll look here on the left-hand side, you'll see there's some shading right here to show that it's a little bit darker on the sides. So I'm not going to do a lot. I'm going to do a thin dark line right here. And then I'm going to gradually get softer as I go back to the middle. And I'm trying to show that the lighthouse has the shape of a cylinder. So that means it has to be very, very light on this side and a little bit darker over here. So I do a very light, dark line. I bring it back to the middle, trying to press lighter and lighter as I go. I'm always trying to show that curved shape. And I can do the same thing on the other side. This is one of the ways that artists meet the challenge of trying to show a three-dimensional form on a two-dimensional flat surface like a piece of paper. We have to use shading, and we have to use value, show that things get lighter as they get closer to us and darker as they wrap around. Now there's also a shadow down here on the ground, so I would think about the sun setting way over there, and it's casting a shadow. The lighthouse is coming back this direction. So I still want to be able to see some of the green grass, but I also want to pull a rectangle shape to the edge of the paper. So I'm going to decide where my shadow is going to be, and then once I draw those lines inside of it, I'm just shading very lightly, a very light value of gray, using my black colored pencil to show that the shadow's falling on the ground. I still want to be able to see some green through there, but I need to see some black too, that the lighthouse is blocking out some of the light. And of course, the last thing that I need to do is I need to do the light that is inside of the lighthouse. So I'm going to use yellow, orange, and red again, the warm colors like we did earlier. I'm just going to color it a solid yellow on the inside first, because as that bright light that's inside lights up the glass that is protecting it, it's going to have a very, very bright glare. But I'm going to add a little bit of orange, mostly on the sides, and get lighter and lighter as I come back to the middle. I am not actually going to show the light like the example that's on the board. I'm not drawing the light mechanism. You may if you want to, but I think that it is so bright when you see that in the lighthouse that you can't really even see the light mechanism. And of course, the last thing that we do when we get done is we sign our name neatly in the bottom right hand corner where I have my signature here. I can't wait to see how your lighthouse turns out.